Kirby Dach and the Montreal Canadiens have finally come to terms on a new contract. We'll discuss what the contract is and what it means for the team and maybe other moves coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some news out of the Montreal Canadiens organization. They have finally come to terms on an agreement on a new contract with recently acquired young centerman Kirby Dach. The contract is for a 4-year deal with an average annual value of $3.36 million. He'll start off for the coming year making $2.5, then he'll jump up to $4.1, drops back down in year 3 to $2.8, and then finishes at $4 million even. So obviously, this contract will take him to be an RFA apparently at the end of this contract. I know based on his ELC being done in 4 years, additional to that, I was under the impression he was going to be a UFA at the conclusion of this contract, but apparently it's being confirmed he will be an RFA with arbitration rights. Now, normally to become a UFA, you have to have 7 accrued NHL seasons. Now, normally an accrued NHL season is when you've played 40 games or 40 games if you're a skater, 30 games if you're a goalie. And of course, if you're injured though, which he obviously was in year 2 of his ELC, normally those games still count. If you're on IR, then the team's playing. If you're on the roster as injured, those games still usually count as an accrued games. Now, of course, in his case, he was on long-term injury reserve because he was out for a significant time. It's 4 to 5 months. There must be something in there. Also, it was a shortened season, so I don't know. Where it's a 56-game campaign, there could have been some different rules, some adjustments made, which obviously does not count that as an accrued season. So I know when they were extending the CBA and getting through early in the pandemic, there were certainly, a few little things changed, and that's obviously something that was an allotment or an allowance there for situations like this where it wasn't a full season. Certainly didn't get enough games to count as in a full accrued season, which is probably fair considering it wasn't a full 82-game campaign. Obviously, the number of games for him to get into that year was less, so it not count. So he only will have 6 accrued seasons by the end of this contract, so therefore he will still have 1 year to go before becoming an unrestricted free agent. So he'll have arbitration rights. Now, the term of the contract said $3.36 million per year. I think it's... some might say it's a bit of an overpayment, but I think it's fair to say that they're hoping to see some progression. This deal could turn out to be a steal if he meets expectations and beyond. I mean, if you look at the pedigree he was drafted with, the number 3 overall pick, when the Blackhawks took him, he started off strong in his rookie year. Looked like there was a lot of promise, a lot of potential there. Obviously playing lower in the lineup. But then, he ran into those major wrist injury in year 2, went to the World Juniors with Team Canada, and didn't even get into the actual tournament play. It was a preseason or like an exhibition game, I should say, before the tournament started on, I think it was Christmas Eve, when he had the major injury and was out for like 4 to 5 months and didn't come back until near the end. I think it was sometime in March or late March or something like that when he made the return. So he hasn't been quite the same player since. Last year, he got into over 70 games, put up like 26 points. So, I mean, it was okay, but he was also on a poor team. There's obviously a lot of stuff going on in Chicago, but really there's a lot going on in Montreal too. It's hard to say exactly where they're going to place him in this lineup. And the expectation is that, he'll blossom into the top 6 center that he was projected to be and that they're hoping he can be. Like I said, and if that's the case, to have a top 6 centerman, and, even if it's not the first year, to be making a cap hit of 3.36 is pretty good. And I guess long term, if things don't really progress, it's not an outrageous amount of money. So there's obviously a little bit of risk associated with every contract, but the risk here I think is reasonably minimal considering his age and upside that he has shown in the past. And we'll see here if things can get back on track. Now, of course, this does put the Montreal Canadiens well above the salary cap, but of course with Carey Price's contract expected to go on long-term injury reserve, that would be, they would still be able to technically be cap compliant with everything that they have on the books now with Price's contract going on LTIR. However, they have more than enough NHL quality forwards, counting players, because I know on CapFriendly.com, like they still have Monahan and Drouin listed on injured reserve because obviously they're probably not, completely clear on their status going into camp. Once they go into camp and, if they're passed on the first day and said they're healthy, then they'll change that. But counting those guys and also counting Slafkovsky, we know that, he went first overall. We've heard Montreal's GM, Ken Hughes, and Jeff Gorton say that they definitely want to get him some games early in the season to see if he'll stick or not. So, they know they want to play him. Michael Pezzetta, who's maybe not a lock to be on the roster, played over 50 games last year. So counting Slafkovsky, Pezzetta, the newly acquired Monahan, and Jonathan Drouin, who I said the cap friendly still has technically listed on IR, but I believe Drouin's been done enough media appearances this offseason through a couple of events and charity events and things like that. I believe he said he's good to return and be able to play from the get-go here. So that gives them 16 NHL forwards. You normally run with 12 in a lineup. Sometimes you have 13 on your roster, maybe 14 at most. Obviously you can have a 23-man roster max. You can't have 16 forwards. I mean, that's assuming that everybody in the forward group is healthy and able to play, which I know that for the most part they are. There's some questions on Monahan. He's hoping to be ready to go for day one, but it is possible that his start with the Habs could be delayed a little bit if he's not quite fully recovered from his significant offseason surgery that he had on his hip. So we'll see where that goes, but even if Monahan's delayed a little bit, that still creates a bit of an opening. You're going to have a couple goalies, 6 defensemen at least. So that does, create a situation where they got to kind of move some people down. Now, they could move a couple of these guys through waivers. They could put Slafkovsky in the minors as a numbers game. Maybe he starts in Laval just until they can move out a body and bring him up later. It's hard to say how this all works out, but speculation is that the Montreal Canadiens would probably like to move a forward or two before the season starts. So as we're getting closer to training camp, getting underway, I would not be surprised if there is a subsequent move coming here from the Habs. I know I'm recording this video about 11:43 my time, which is on the Atlantic coast. I know Eastern time, that puts us an hour behind. I know there is an expectation here that Ken Hughes and Kirby Dach are both going to speak here in about an hour or two, so we might get a little bit more clarity from Hughes if there's anything else being worked on. Of course, he's not going to go into great detail, but he might let us in on, some other potential things that they're at least considering, or, just to kind of give us a little bit of insight, hopefully. But the Montreal Canadiens, I would suspect, will be a little bit busy here before either before training camp gets underway, or at least before the season gets underway. But let me know your thoughts on the Dach contract. Decent term, decent money. A little bit of risk, but if he evolves into be the player they're hoping he will be, then certainly it could be well worth it. And if all the rumors are persisting about them getting Pierre-Luc Dubois, maybe Dach becomes a trade chip, and this is a very tradable contract if he's anywhere near what's expected of him. So either way, it should work out. So let me know your thoughts on the contract and what other subsequent moves you think Hughes and the Habs will make as a result of the cap situation and roster situation here as well. We'll talk about it further in the comments. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.